Welcome back, Inebriites. This is Andy, your humble host, as always. And we've actually been getting a lot of cool guests from all over now. And today's guest is from Sweden, just outside of Copenhagen. I'm not going to try to pronounce your town again, but Catharina Jaunviksna, that
Yeah,
Jaunviksna, yeah.
yeah,
All right,
perfect.
cool. Also known as Badlands.
hmm
And you're producer, composer, sound engineer. Like it just sounds like anything that involves music and sound, you're kind of involved in.
Yeah, that's correct. I started sampling and making electronic music like already when I was teenager, not knowing that I was kind of starting to sound design without realizing what that was, and
Yeah.
that became music, and that made me work within sound design. And sorry, someone's ringing the doorbell here at the studio space, but it's not my guest, so
Yeah.
sorry if you hear. But yeah, no, that's correct. I usually say that I don't write songs, I sculpture songs.
Oh, that's an
And
interesting way of looking at
yeah,
it. Yeah.
that's the way of explaining how I work, like with sound in every field, really.
Yeah, and I was checking out some of your songs. And it's definitely like I'm glad you said like electronic music because I was trying to figure out how I would describe it, and it's very like melodic and atmospheric. I don't know if that's kind of what you shoot for, but I felt it was like very relaxing and chill and it is that your kind of style, or do you try to like mix it up between your different albums and whatnot?
I just do whatever comes to heart and mind. I never have um, a plan or a concept for a release before I start making the tracks.
Mm-hmm.
And sure, it started off with me when I was like super young, playing in bands and things like that. But I'm quite a lone wolf. So when I started making electronic music and got into sampling and synths, I really found a sanctuary within that scene and within that way of working. But then again, when I did say electronic music, but a lot of it is electroacoustic. Do you pronounce
Okay.
it that way?
Yep. Yep.
As well. So like I might have an electronic bass for something, but then I record plenty of like instruments such as like on this record, Call to Love, for instance, a lot of it is classical cello and double bass that's played with bow,
Yep.
that I invited a studio friend to play, because the rest 99 percent is me. I'm playing most stuff, but sometimes there might be something that inspires me that I can't play myself, and then I invite someone to play on the record. So yeah, it is electronic. For sure, but I don't know, electroacoustic fusion,
Yeah.
fusion electronica, or yeah, something like that.
Yeah, it's so funny because I've said it before on the show, back in my day, you go in the record store and there was like literally four genres or five genres.
Mhm.
And now it's like nothing fits into anything. So it's always kind of the challenge to like put your finger on like you're either trying to compare to be like, oh, they kind of sound like this with a little bit of that. And it's really
Mhm.
it's become more complex to try and explain
Yeah,
someone's style. Yeah.
yeah, for sure. A friend of mine during rehearsals, because I do play with the band live, even though I Balance is a solo project. He called it one day or one night he called it outlaw electronica, and I kind of like that. So that's so I guess Badland has invented its own genre a little bit. But yeah, I know exactly what you mean, and you try to use like five, six, sometimes seven different genres to try and describe what you're doing. But yeah, I don't know.
How many instruments did you play on the album?
uh, what counts as instruments? Does a record
I don't know.
player count as instruments?
I
I
suppose
don't
that's the
know.
musician's
Yeah,
determination, you
but
know?
if I was to yeah, try and yeah, kind of pinpoint, but like the mixing is my main instrument, I always say.
Yeah.
And then I play like the classical instruments I play on this record is like piano and bass and guitar, like electric guitar with a lot of pedals. And I love pedals. And I sing. And I take whatever's there, maybe like might be a cardboard box that has a cool sound that I make a kick out of or something like that. So it's hard to say exactly what I do play, but everything happens in the mix.
Yeah.
And that's where I also hear like what's needed and not. And of course, my my synths and drum machines and things like that goes without saying. On this the two synths I've been using more recently is probably the Polysix, the Corey, and the Juno 106, and then CS80 as well. But I mean, I don't know. To me, it doesn't matter if you use like super cool vintage stuff or Fruity Loops. I'm super pragmatic, so whatever makes the mix good, I'll use it.
Yeah, I love that. It's from a visual art standpoint. I had a teacher always said, whatever you need to make the mark. And there was one kid that used this weird, like he took a wire coat hanger and straightened it, but then like kind of folded it back and made a handle out of part of it, and then like used a wire coat hanger dipped in ink, and that's like what he drew with. And I love that kind of it really becomes it's the play part of creativity, I think. Like
definitely.
When you're a kid, that's just your nature, is to kind of explore, what is the sound, what kind of mark can I make, and where's the weirdest object, or what's the weirdest object that like you kind of found a cool sound from?
God, it's probably, since I'm a huge sample freak, I love finding weird samples of things and use them. Like, I don't know. I always have the last project in mind when I talk and think about something. And this time I think was like a weird church choir 7-inch from a French recording of a church choir that I thought had a really cool texture, and you can hear it here and there on the record. That was maybe the most here's the English problem again, but both like unexpected thing that I say, like that's something you can't go like, oh, today I'm hitting the studio. What am I going to do today? Oh, I'm going to try and find a weird 7-inch of a French boy choir that's really far away and has a weird scratch on it. It just happens to be there, and you sit and you have your coffee and you try around a few things, and then it's like, oh my God, that really harmonized in a really weird way with that. And like whatever inspires and kicks off the imagination. So that would sorry, like that, the answer to your question would be that not so much weird instruments or weird objects, more weird samples of old recordings.
Now when you sample something like that, is there like copyright issues involved? Like how
you find stuff that's either
public domain
or just no one would ever find it. Like it's just like when you have writer's block, and you which I never have because I always have several ongoing projects, so I just jump in between them. But say you're trying to find ideas or you're looking for inspiration, it's a great way to then like make a cover of a song, and then all of a sudden it becomes something completely different, and then all of a sudden it's your own. I think working with sampling is this similar way, because then it's like you might pitch the sample certain ways, you might tweak it, you might change the tempo, whatever. You might change it so much that it would be unrecognizable.
Yeah.
And it might even end with you, with me in this case, recording something over it that sparked an idea. So I don't know. I think there are and shouldn't be any rules when it comes to music, unless you you take something obvious like
Right.
and where it's supposed to be obvious. But in terms of trying to spark ideas and yeah, I don't know. I've never ever that's never been a problem. But actually, now that you're saying on the last record, Gin, from last year,
Yep.
I had a sample from Jacob's Ladder. Do you know that movie?
Oh yeah.
It's like an
Yeah,
horror
yeah,
movie,
yeah. I'm
Jacob's
trying to
Ladder.
remember.
And
Yeah.
yeah, and like everyone said to me, like, oh, you don't have to worry, nobody will ever be able to hear that. But that's kind of freaked me out a bit. So it ended with me taking it off the same week that it was going to the vinyl
Yeah.
pressing plant, because I
Hmm.
was like, just last second, I was like, no, it's not worth it if something happens. So it has happened to me as well, but that's why I always avoid those situations.
Right, right. I remember, when I was in college, I listened to a lot of industrial music out of Chicago, and they sampled tons of stuff. And it
Yeah.
was always like kind of cool, like when you stumbled across, like, oh, that's what that's from, that kind of
Yeah,
thing.
I know. I
Yeah,
love that. It's
yeah,
so cool. On the last record as well, not on this. Yeah, do you know the Conan project? It's
yeah.
like it was like oh, my English again. Those radio stations during the Second World War where they had sent coded messages to each other
Yep.
um, throughout like transatlantic and within Europe and things like that. So a bit like Enigma. And a lot of those recordings have been taken care of, and I think they're even copyright protected now. But I found some that weren't,
Yeah.
and I used it for a track on the last record.
Oh,
And
that's
there was
cool.
a guy actually that reached out on Instagram and said he had found what sample it was, and it was. Yeah, that was a really nice way of connecting.
Yeah, yeah.
It wasn't like, oh, I know you took that one. It's like, oh my God, I can't believe you found that one. What does it mean to you, and why did you use that one? So it can be a really cool way to nerd out with
Yeah, yeah.
other sample, sample freaks. I don't know.
Well, it's that, and it's like, sound engineers are really interesting people to talk to, because it's just like they're so engaged in like the minutia that I think most people don't even realize. I was during COVID, a friend of mine opened a music studio because he had nothing to do, so he built himself a music studio. And there was just one day like where he's like snapping his fingers, like, do you hear that? Do you hear that like little echo? Do you hear? And I'm like, no, man, like I don't hear it. So do you find yourself kind of like dwelling on maybe those things that other people aren't hearing, but they're bothering you?
Um, I'm not the like things that bother me, I don't pay attention to. I'm very much in my own world all the time. I'm such a dreamer, and I just hear what I hear, and I just filter out what bothers me and I'm not interested in. So I'm the complete opposite to that audio engineer that sits and listens to Toto on his new hi-fi
Yeah,
whatever. I'm super punk. I'm very like, I don't care if I stretch a sample so it's bit crushed like crazy, if that makes me sparks
yeah,
an idea or something. Like, it's all about emotion for me. So I wouldn't be that guy that snaps the fingers like, but if there was something really cool happening with it,
Yeah.
say, if it inspired me, if it was like, oh wow, can you hear that slap, or can you
Yeah.
hear, like, doesn't it remind me of it? Then I take note of it. But
Mhm.
I'd never go, oh, this is a, I don't know, shitty space, or I don't know if I understood you, or maybe I misunderstood you, but
No, I think
I'm
you
not
kind
like
of
an
got it.
audiophile in that
Yeah.
sense. However, though, I just finished the work with the drama series for Swedish public radio only 2 weeks ago, and where we have been making this series. They call it audio film, and I've been working on that for 6 months. So it's a huge project, and I recorded and mixed and sound designed everything, and everything is made in post. So
Yeah.
I took all these 36 actors into super dry space and had them audio directing them, and then making everything in post, just like when you do ADR on big feature films or animation or
Hmm.
whatever. And then I realized, when you're with people that are not audio or sound people, normally, because normally when you do work like that, maybe you're in a studio with other people that understand your lingo, or you cover. But when you're alone, when you're the sound designer alone, that makes you realize that, okay, maybe this is a bit of a, like, audio fetish world or whatever I'm living in, because
Yeah.
I was like, are you kidding? Are you going to record the scene in an apartment? Are you mad?
Yeah. Yeah.
And I brought the whole crew back to a dry studio space. Like, how do you think I'm supposed to work with this? So it's like, I suppose when I say I don't care and I'm punk, it's within certain standards,
Right. Yeah.
like,
Yeah.
in a way. But and that's the professional sound designing mixer, Catharina. But then again, it's so nice to be Badlands, because when I'm Badlands, I don't care where I am. I can make music in a bathroom or make music in a kitchen. Like, it's all about inspiration and emotion. And if I think the I don't know, the laptop microphone sounds better than the Neumann, I'll use the laptop microphone, which I
Right.
wouldn't in such a context where I work with the ADR or sound design for a movie or a series or something like that. So, yeah, it depends on what hat I have on.
But and I like that, and you even said it earlier that you have like multiple projects going on at the same time. So if you kind of get stuck with one, you can kind of jump into another, and I think that's a great way to work, where it kind of keeps you from getting too hung up in one or the other. When you were doing that, what did you call it? A audio movie? Is that what?
Yeah, they call it that. It's kind of interesting. It's
Yeah.
like, it's this new concept that Swedish public radio has, where it is like, it has almost the budget of a real film, and it
Oh, wow.
sound like a real film, but without the
The pictures. Yeah.
without the picture. Yeah,
Now, did you have to do like the Foley work for that as well?
yeah, everything, absolutely everything you hear. So it's yeah.
Because I always found that sort of
It's a
stuff
lot of
like,
work. It's a lot of
yeah,
work.
I always
Yeah.
found that stuff fascinating. Or when you see like sound designers for like, these big Hollywood movies that make a monster roar, and it's like, oh, it's part sea lion and a little bit of tiger and my dog growling, and they
Yeah,
kind of
yeah,
mix it and pitch it up and down.
yeah.
Um, did you kind of have to go through that with the series? Did you have to like incorporate sounds that aren't normals?
Oh, yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
But each sound is maybe a mix of, sometimes it can be a mix of 12 sounds, and sometimes you find something. But I mean, I've been working with this so much. I've been doing Foley for, say, Game of Thrones, and worked on feature films and things
Oh,
like
no
that as
kidding.
well. So
Yeah.
this is not new to me. But what I don't like working with in film, and why I stopped doing that, is because you're just a tool in someone's toolbox.
Yeah.
So the last few years or 10 years, I've only worked with small projects where you have a big like artistic or creative influence on the project.
Yeah.
So that's why I really like working with series like this or documentary or theater. And I make documentaries myself as a journalist and radio journalist as well. And then I can do the whole thing, like the storytelling and the mixing and the sound designing and everything. So it's a big freedom to work with sound in that way.
So you're
And
a musician, a sound designer,
storyteller.
storyteller. Like,
Yeah.
what did you go to school for?
Um,
I mean,
yeah, but I did go. I did go to the National Film School of Denmark. You know,
mhm.
where Lars von Trier went, and it's a really prestigious school, probably the
Yeah.
most prestigious in Europe. I went there. They had a sound design program 4 years, and I dropped out after 2 years because I wanted to make music. So I've studied a bit here and there, and I got into that school, and they take 6 students every second year. So it was a big process of getting in and all that. But then, yeah, it was just like after 2 years there, I realized, yeah, it's great, but I don't want to be in someone's toolbox. But
Yeah.
then I worked a little within film and got on a few projects and things like that. So, but then again, I've learned so much going through all these what do you say, areas, or worked with, you know, theater, film, or performing arts, radio, TV, everything. And in the end, music is always what I want to do, and I know that, but you have to pay the bills as
Of
well.
course. Yeah.
And
Yeah.
doing
Yeah.
so, working with sound design is an amazing way of making a living, as well as making music and like what do you say, commissioned music as well.
Yeah.
I make some, and it's not like for me, sound design and music, they're connected. I can't make music without making sound design at the same time, and the other way around. Like, even sound design without music has a rhythm. You have to be good at melody. You have to be a musical person in order to be a sound designer. Otherwise, sure, you can be a sound designer, but you won't get the material to sound vivid and alive. And
Yeah.
so it all, and yeah, and I Badlands wouldn't sound like Badlands if I wasn't into that stuff either.
Yeah. It sounds like it's this, that you're in both areas trying to capture emotion. You know, in music, you're trying to capture the emotion of the song. In sound design, you're trying to capture the emotion of whatever particular story is going on.
Yeah.
Is there like a trick to that? Like, or is it just something that you've kind of learned? Because it's not as easy as people think, you know, trying to evoke an emotion, you know.
Well, it was always my that's my drive to manipulate and awake emotions.
Yeah.
Or evoke emotion, like, and what all you have to do is to look at yourself, you know, what sparks that emotion in me, why does it spark that emotion, and then you copy that and do that and dare that. I think within all creativity and doing your own thing and inventing your own sound or your own way of how do you say, awake emotion or awoke emotion in people.
What's
What is
trying to think of like a good
yeah, a good
yeah,
word.
I know what you're saying.
Rise
Yeah,
emotion in people.
there's a word for it and I'm blanking on it. See, it's not your English, it's just
Yeah, it's just the word that
yeah.
is hidden. Yeah, but in order to do that, I think the most important thing is like the golden key to all creativity is not give a damn about what people think. And once you truly have achieved that place within yourself where you really don't give a crap what people think, if it's good or if it's bad, or no, it awoke the wrong feeling or the wrong emotion, blah, blah, when you don't care about, not only like use yourself as a kind of receiver, and you feel that it's true, then I think 90% is one, you know, it's then you're almost there in goal. Because if I listen to something and like this emotion or this influence or this sudden inspiration fly by, it's up to me to grab it and interpret it, you know. No one's going to do it for you,
right?
And that's why I think it's so interesting with the old Greeks. They looked at ideas as beings, so like little angels. So if someone got an idea and you didn't nurse it, if you didn't take care of it, it would fly to someone else.
Oh,
and
okay.
he or she would take that idea and make it her own. And I almost look at it the same way. Of course, I don't believe in that stuff, but I think creativity works like that. That I can walk down the street and I hear an ambulance that goes through my headphones. I'm listening to something and I hear a siren or something, and that creates a really cool harmony with whatever music I'm listening to, and that wakes pictures and sounds and idea streams within me. Then it's up to me to sing that into my iPhone or whatever, you know, and go to the studio and start that track or whatever. And if not, I only have 10 seconds, 20 seconds, and then it's gone.
Right.
You know, then it's not there anymore. And it doesn't have to be that scenario. It can be just me sitting watching a series or reading a book for my kid. You know, it can happen anytime, but it's up to me to grab it and nurse it. Like, ideas doesn't come because you sit and think hard. Ideas and creativity, love, emotion, it's out of our control.
Yeah.
And once you realize that, you have the golden key, you know.
Yeah. And to me, that's the biggest endorphin rush, when you kind of stumble across something like that. Even you know, recently we run comedy shows now, and you know, afterwards you're hanging out with the comics and chit-chatting or whatever, and you know, they're talking about their joke, and then just, you know, absentmindedly you just say something to be funny, and they're like, oh my god, that's a great tag, I'm writing that down, can I use that? And you're like, yes, please, that's awesome, you know.
It's exactly like that.
It's just that like spark that I've always found when I draw that I draw the best when I feel like my brain's completely shut off, and it's almost like I'm not thinking at all, and it's just kind of, it's a flow state. It's hard to explain, but it's like I feel like the best things come from that, where you didn't think about it, it just kind of falls out, you know.
And that's why it's not rational. It doesn't make sense, so you can't explain it to anybody. Like there's no prescription or no ways of doing it. You just have to stay back and wait for it, you know. And that's why I could never make a conceptual record from the get-go. You know, I could never sit down and write down or think like, oh, now I'm going to make a record about love and how humanity looks at love. And now it became Call to Love. The last record became Gin, about dealing with loss. But it wasn't like I sat down and thought, oh, now I'm going to make a track or 12 tracks about this or that. That's what you realize when you start packaging it together. Almost at the end, when it's maybe just 10% left. Before it's time to master it, you know, it's like, oh my god, what did I just go through, you know? Then you start realizing and piece it together, and okay, how can these tracks, or I do at least, how can these tracks come together as one, and what story am I telling here? And that's when the fun begins again, you know.
Yeah.
It's
Yeah,
like,
yeah, for sure.
yeah, the first 10% are amazing, where when you're in that endorphin rush and you're just like so inspired, and you just run and yeah, with that piece of paper with your comedian friend or whatever,
Yeah, 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 yeah.
start making the writing the jokes or whatever, and then follows like 80% of complete like darkness, depression, despair, trying to piece this record or whatever it is together. And then the last 10% are just almost as lovely as the first 10, you know.
Yeah.
It's just, but you really have to go through that self-hating horrible I don't know, ditch that
Yeah.
a creative
It's
process is
it's so
awful.
funny that that's how you describe it, because it is
Yeah.
this kind of weird, like, I think creative people are the only people who can simultaneously love something they did and hate it.
Yeah. So much.
And be like, I really, really like this square right here. I mean, everything else is terrible, but this square right here, I really love, and it's that,
Yeah.
we
You
have
love it
weird
so much.
brains.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
But what I love about the creative process, when you've been through it a few times, say you've done it once, twice, 3 times, 4 times, then you'll get out on the other side and it's going to be awesome. And that's what's so reassuring with having released a few records or been in a few projects, whatever you do, or done a few, I don't know, movies, stand-up shows, whatever,
Yeah.
it's going to be fine in the end. And that's what I love about getting older as well. It's not like when you were 18 and you just like, you didn't know what was up and down and back and forth. It's just like, we'll be fine. It doesn't
Yeah.
matter. Like, sit back, And that's what's nice to know about all parts of the creative process as well. Like with the release now, most people hate releasing stuff, myself included. But when I feel that anxiety come knocking, I just like, it's exactly like with the creative process. Like, just sit back, lean back, it'll be fine. It'll
Yeah.
sort itself out, it'll be fine. And then it always is fine, or it gets fine. And
It's funny that you say that, because I'm working through that myself, where we run events, and
yeah.
my business partner is like, he's like, I can almost set my watch to it, like 20 minutes before the event. I'm like, where is everybody? Why isn't anyone here? What's going on? Like, are we on the right date? Is that, he's like, your panic attack happens like 20 minutes before every event. And so like now I just try to stay busy at that point, so I'm not
Yeah.
aware of what time it is. But yeah, it's I mean, to me, that's just part of the process. That's just,
Yeah.
And people are like, will you relax? I'm like, if I relaxed and didn't care, I don't think our events would be as good as they are, because they don't care, so
There you
it's,
go.
yeah.
Yeah.
So talking about, the dark depression of trying to make it together, well, is there part of the sound design process, either music or for these audio movies, is there something about it that you really hate? Is there a part of your job that, you're just like, ugh, I gotta answer emails for an hour today, or I have to sit in a meeting? Is there some part of it that you're just like, I could do without that?
Yeah, definitely. Like, the sound design stuff is more like work to me. Like, so then I just deal with it.
Mm-hmm.
But music is my main work. So I say 80% of everything I do is music, and Badlands is in that as well. And with that, I really hate the donkey work. When
Donkey
you
work?
have to like, when there's something that needs to be done in a session, say in a Pro Tools session,
Mm-hmm.
if it's music, it's like, oh, I really have to sit and work out that those I don't know, snares. Like, and I'm so old school as well when I work. So I sit with a session, and if I want, like, the slight a bit of nice latency on the snare, I sit and like really I record everything into reels, so I don't like programming things. Let's say I program stuff in Ableton, and then I slave it to Pro Tools, and then I record it, and then I sit and nudge it by hand, manually, because I want the exact latency that gives that the exact right feeling, and that is so incredibly boring and time consuming. But then when I've sat with that for say 2 days and you hear the difference, then it's so worth it, So I know, like, now it's so boring. I hate this. Oh my God, the vocals aren't good enough, like, or whatever. When it's just stuff that needs to be done, it's I don't like. Not one part of me likes doing that, but that's when you have to remind yourself that if you want to make good stuff, you cannot only work when you're inspired. You have to do all the other stuff as well. But that's when you have to force yourself to go to work or get work in. And sometimes it can be hard to separate that from being uninspired or have writer's block, but it is two different things, And that donkey work that I was talking about, that's a good thing to do when you're uninspired as well. So say, like, I'm a huge procrastinator, and I love procrastinating. I think that's the best advice anybody could ever give to someone that's struggling with creative process or writer's block or whatever, because procrastination means that you just go with the flow. It's like, if you have flow with something, work on that, even if you have a deadline in 3 days on something else, because flow doesn't come when you order it, or flow doesn't come on a schedule. So even if I have a huge deadline in 4 days and I get flow with the Badlands thing, I work on the Badlands thing, and then I finish off the deadline in 6 hours with coffee, like procrastination is a good thing, and that's that's something you should nurse instead of trying to avoid.
I love that, and I'm going to use that a lot. but I mean, it's so true. Like, when you work in a creative field of any kind, it's even when you're not doing something, your brain's still working the problem, even if you're not thinking about it. Because that's like when you hear that ambulance noise, and you're like, oh, hey, your brain automatically latches onto that. So it's like you almost have to have that downtime to let your brain kind of stumble across those cool things that you're just not gonna, whether it's my youngest loves painting but doesn't like to paint on canvas, because they're always like, oh, it's boring, it's not a cool thing to paint on. And so, like, we're talking, and I'm like, well, what if you attach things to the canvas? And her thing was like, every Christmas or birthday, what people give me canvas because they don't know what else to give me. And I'm like, well, what if you attach things to the canvas? What if you attach the canvases to each other in weird ways so they're not flat? And they were like, oh yeah, I never thought of that. I'm like, I just thought of it just now, like, because you put the question to me, and sometimes it's just, you just have to, maybe even if that's from that experience of where you're just like, I don't care, like.
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah, and kind of that play where it's like,
instead of sitting down with her, like, how are we going to solve the problem with the canvas? Now, it's like, it doesn't work like that.
Yeah, and
but it's true.
And it's, to me, it's all about that play, where you're going to play with something and figure out what it does, and then be like, oh, it didn't work out, and that's okay, whatever. I tried it.
Yeah.
Because so we're kind of coming towards the end. Call to Love is out on November 18th. Is that correct?
Yeah.
And where can our listeners go to find that?
I prefer Bandcamp, badlandsounds.bandcamp.com. You can pre-order it now already. And
not to be confused with the hair metal band Badlands, which when I did a quick Google search, I'm like, oh, I used to have that album.
But my online ID and hashtag Badlands sounds in word. So if you want to check that out on wherever, you'll find me.
Now, is this something that you plan on touring to support?
Well, I'll be making a few European shows now in
Mhm.
November and December in Sweden and Denmark and Ireland and France. And then I was hoping to come to the US in the beginning of the spring
Oh,
and
nice.
do the same thing. Like, yeah, I'll keep you posted on
Yeah,
that
for
one.
sure.
But
That'd be cool.
what I did,
Yeah.
what I'm trying to do, and I do have a band that I play with live as well, is to make like a small portable set. So it's not that big of a deal, that it's quite easy to do a cool in-store and or a gallery and things
Yeah.
like that. So what I'm going to try to prioritize for this one is like small gigs, 40, 50 people in small spaces, interesting spaces,
Yeah.
anywhere. And that's why I'm making something that I can play with myself and with 3 other people as well, and everything in between.
Cool.
So yeah,
All
I'm
right.
hoping to.
Is there a website or Instagram where when you do post that stuff that'll be available?
Yeah, but the Instagram is where I usually, it's the only really social media
Yeah.
that I use, and that's Badlands Sounds
Sound.
in Word as well. Yeah, and then there's a web page as well, badlands.nu as well. But the Instagram is where I post all the news. So
Excellent. Well, thanks for taking the time to talk. This was awesome. I had a really good time.
yeah, it was great. It was
So
fun. Went quick.
yeah, and your English was fine. I don't know what you were talking about. You remind me, I was in Denmark one time and we got into a cab and I'm like, "Do you speak English?" He's like, "No." So we had the address and we gave him the address. And then the whole way there, he talked to us. I'm like, "Your English is fine. I don't know what you're going on about." Like,
No, but I'm married to an Irish guy, so
oh, okay.
I do think, but
That's
it's a different
really
thing when
funny.
you're put on the spot, and it's like,
That's really funny because a few times when you were talking, I'm like, she
yeah,
almost sounds Irish.
yeah. No, but that's I've lived in Dublin as well when I
Yeah.
was younger, and back and forth, and I have Irish friends, but yeah, it's different,
Yeah.
when when it's
When you're
a
on the spot.
professional
Yeah.
thing.
Awesome.
Mhm.
Well, thank you again
Yeah.
so much. And
Well, thank
thanks to our
you.
listeners. And we'll catch you guys again next week.
Yeah. Bye bye.
And thanks for checking out the show today, listeners. If you enjoyed the content today, you can go over to patreon.com/Inebri-art to support the show. You can join over there for just a few dollars a month and help us provide this fun content that you just checked out. You can also email us at Inebri-art.com with your questions, complaints, and concerns, or you can find us on all social medias at Inebri-art or at Inebri-art6 on Instagram. And also don't forget to check out our other shows, Bar Talk Podcast, Old Colony Cast, Inebri-art, and all the other shows on the Inebri-art Network, which you can find at Inebri-art.com. Thanks again for listening.